Have you ever found something you wished you could forget? After 3 years of marriage, I discovered my wife's secret closet. What I saw there turned our marriage upside down forever. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. I discovered the life she had been living behind my back. Secret visits to secret places. An interesting website. And a side of her that I had never seen before, not once in 3 years. I kept quiet. I made a plan. And then, step by step, I carried it out. If you think it ended in confrontation, you're wrong. It will end with cameras, auctions, silence, and an unexpected ending that even I didn't see coming. But let me tell you the whole story from the beginning. Madison and I had been married for just over 3 years. I was 36 when we tied the knot, and at the time, I thought I'd finally done it right. I had a stable career, senior management at a logistics company. Good pay, long hours, but I didn't mind. I liked coming home to a quiet house, a glass of whiskey, and the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. The house was mine, bought 5 years before we married. Madison moved in after the wedding. She didn't work full-time. She was a photographer, mostly weddings, baby showers, and sometimes branding shoots for people trying to make it on social media. She had a nice camera, a little home studio in the sunroom, and a decent online following. She brought in some money, but I covered most of our living costs. I never complained. I figured as long as she was doing something productive and happy, I was good with it. She wasn't lazy. At least, not in a way I could see. But Madison had a thing for luxury. Expensive bags, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Saint Laurent. She'd get all giddy over the packaging, post a little unboxing video, and then sometimes she'd only wear the damn thing once. Same with her clothes. Her wardrobe was packed full of designer labels, some still with tags. She claimed she got deals through online resellers, friends in fashion, or from clients who gave her gifts. I didn't pry too much. Honestly, I chalked most of it up to her being a bit high maintenance. I figured, whatever, I make enough to keep the lights on and she's not draining me. Let her have her fun. Looking back, I was blind. One Saturday afternoon, I was digging through the guest room for an old external hard drive. I hadn't used it in a year or so, but I needed some tax documents I'd stored on it. The guest room was mostly storage, boxes of Madison's photography props, old suitcases, winter clothes, and a cabinet pushed against the far wall. It was one of those tall, white wardrobes. Nothing special. We never really used it. I figured the hard drive might have been tossed inside during a cleanup binge. I grabbed the side to shift it, and it moved. Way more than it should have. Not like the usual scraping drag of pressed-up furniture, either. This thing slid. My first thought was that it wasn't bolted right. So I shifted it again, this time deliberately. That's when I noticed the base wasn't sitting flush with the wall. There was a slight gap, barely visible unless you looked close. My pulse jumped, just a little. I'd been in that room 100 times and never noticed it wasn't flush. So I tugged on it again, and sure enough, it slid a good 2 feet to the left. Like it was on wheels. Behind it was a small recessed door. No handle, just a flat panel that looked like a part of the wall. Now I don't know about you, but when you find something hidden in your own house, you paid for, maintain, and live in with your wife, and you don't know it's there, that does something to you. I opened the little panel, expecting maybe a breaker box or access to pipes. Instead, I saw velvet-lined shelves, lit by one of those tiny battery-powered tap lights. And on those shelves, gold. Not plated, not costume jewelry. Real gold chains. Multiple. Thick. Heavy. There were bracelets, anklets, rings, all high-end. A few watches I didn't recognize, but they looked expensive. One box had rolls of cash. Not much, but more than a few hundred. Maybe a few grand, neatly rubber-banded in hundreds and fifties. I stood there for what felt like an hour, just staring at it all. My brain didn't quite catch up to what I was seeing. This wasn't the jewelry I knew she owned, the necklace I bought her for our anniversary, the earrings she wore to dinners. No, I'd never seen this stuff. She had a regular jewelry box on her dresser for the things I didn't know about. This was something else. A secret. It wasn't just the items themselves, it was the way it was all hidden. The way it was organized. This wasn't a forgotten stash or some tucked-away gift box. This was curated, maintained, protected. I didn't say anything to Madison that day. I didn't even touch anything. I just closed the panel, slid the wardrobe back into place, and sat down in the guest bed like someone had punched me in the stomach. That closet didn't just hold gold and cash. It held the first real evidence that I didn't know my wife at all. I told myself not to overreact. After I found that hidden closet, I sat on the guest bed for a long time, just thinking, trying to come up with any explanation that didn't make my chest feel tight. Madison always had expensive taste, sure, but maybe I'd just underestimated how much she made from photography. Maybe she was good with money and had investments or savings she'd never mentioned. We didn't share accounts, and she liked to handle her own finances. Maybe that was it. But the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. I'm not clueless. I manage people, money, and logistics for a living. I've got a pretty solid idea of what things cost and how far a dollar stretches. And what I saw in that closet wasn't just a few lucky purchases or some stashed away birthday cash. That was tens of thousands of dollars in gold, if not more. So I started watching her a little closer. It wasn't anything dramatic. I didn't snoop or follow her around like a cartoon villain. I just paid attention to her schedule, to what she said she was doing, to how often she left the house. She was always busy, always had a shoot. She told me she had 4 photo sessions that week. Weddings, engagements, some branding thing for a boutique. I didn't question it. Not directly. But I started keeping mental notes. One night, I caught her in the kitchen, smiling at something on her phone. I casually asked, "How was the shoot today?" She nodded without looking up and said, "Good, long. My back hurts." Then she slipped her phone into her robe and walked off to shower. That nagging feeling in my gut twisted a little tighter. That was the moment I decided I needed help. Not from a buddy, not from her friends. Real help. Professional help. I reached out to a guy I knew through work. Scott. He'd retired from private investigations, but he still did the occasional case when someone he trusted asked. We met for lunch at a place across town. I told him what I'd found, and he didn't blink. "She's hiding something," he said flatly, then pulled out a little notepad. "Give me her schedule, routines, car model, license plate, anything else you know. I'll start tomorrow." And he did. Scott followed her for 7 straight days. He sent me nightly updates via text, short and professional. Left house at 10:12 a.m. Lunch with friend at noon. Returned home at 3:45 p.m. That kind of thing. But on day 3, something odd showed up. Checked into hotel, Royal Pines Inn, 2:05 p.m. Left alone 3:24 p.m. No overnight stay. No luggage. No other person entered with her. I stared at that message like it was written in a foreign language. A hotel? For an hour and change? Alone? Maybe she needed to take client photos somewhere aesthetic. Or maybe she just needed a quiet place to work. I tried to convince myself that it was harmless. One-off. Just a weird detail. Then the next day it happened again. Different hotel. Same pattern. In alone. Out in under 90 minutes. By the end of the week, she'd visited 3 different hotels. Never stayed longer than an hour and a half. Never stayed overnight. And always alone. I felt like my chest was hollowing out. Like my stomach dropped and forgot how to climb back up. Scott met me again on Sunday to go over the full report. He laid everything out. Maps, timestamps, even photos. He showed me a picture of Madison walking into a small boutique hotel in Midtown, wearing jeans, a long coat, and carrying only her purse. Then another, the next day, leaving a different place in a different outfit. Always casual. Always calm. Nothing frantic or panicked. Just like it was routine. She said she had 4 photo shoots this week. I told Scott. He flipped through his notebook and read aloud. 1. That's what I clocked. Thursday, she photographed a family at the park. The other days? Lunches. Shopping. Hotels. I rubbed my face hard, like I could scrub the realization off. It didn't work. Scott didn't push me to react. He just gave me the facts. He said he wasn't jumping to conclusions, and I shouldn't either, not until I was ready. But something shifted in me that night. It wasn't just about the hidden closet anymore, or the designer things she kept tucked away behind a sliding cabinet. It was the pattern, the lies, or maybe the omissions. The way she smiled at me in the evenings and told me about her day without ever blinking. Like there wasn't a thing wrong in the world. I sat in the living room until 2 a.m. that night. Madison was already asleep. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old wood. I kept hearing her voice in my head. For shoots this week. Just like that. Confident. Like I'd never find out. That was when I realized this wasn't just some misunderstanding. Something was happening. And I had no idea who I was really living with. I'd never paid much attention to Madison's phone habits before. But after everything, the closet, the investigator's report, The hotel visits, I couldn't stop noticing them. The way she always kept her phone face down. How it was never more than an arm's length away, even when she was showering. Always on vibrate. No sounds, no buzzers. Just dead silent. She told me once that ringtones gave her anxiety, that all the pinging and chiming from notifications got on her nerves. I didn't argue. I liked the quiet too. But now, I started seeing it differently. That silence wasn't peace, it was control. She never let the phone draw attention to itself. That's when I called Tyler. Tyler and I go way back, college roommates. He's one of those guys who got into tech before it was cool. Built his own PCs, ran little black box experiments in our dorm, could hack the vending machine to drop out free sodas. He now works as a cybersecurity analyst for a government contractor. One of those jobs where he can't say much about what he does, but you know it's serious. I told him I needed a favor. I didn't go into detail, but he didn't need much. I said I wanted access to phone, that I bought a matching model, same make and year. I asked if he could help clone it. He just said, "I'll bring the kit. You distract her." We planned it for a Friday night. I invited him over for dinner like it was just a catch-up visit. Madison liked Tyler. She thought he was funny, a bit nerdy, harmless. She didn't suspect a thing. I cooked steaks. Madison brought out her signature dessert, some chocolate mousse thing that needed a lot of mixing and prep. While she was elbows deep in egg whites and cocoa powder, I casually asked her to show Tyler that old photo book from her first wedding shoot. "He's never seen your early stuff," I said. She wiped her hands, left the phone on the edge of the table, and went to the bookshelf. Tyler moved like a magician. Slid her phone into a small padded pouch, plugged it into a black device from his backpack, tapped something on a small touchscreen. Less than 12 minutes later, he handed me the replica phone. "It'll mirror her data," he said. "Texts, apps, call logs, even GPS pings." I thanked him. Madison came back, completely unaware. That night, while Madison brushed her teeth, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the new phone. It looked exactly like hers. Same wallpaper. Same folders. Everything in the same place. It felt like I was holding a piece of her, except this one told the truth. When she came to bed, I slid the phone under my pillow and said nothing. She scrolled through hers for a while, then turned over and shut off the light. Once she was asleep, I opened the clone. The first thing I noticed? She used incognito mode constantly. Her browser history was empty. No cookies. No saved passwords. And then, I saw online how she entered the site in incognito mode. It opened to a page that froze my hands cold. A dating profile. Not just any dating profile. A premium one. Her username was a string of numbers and letters. Her profile picture was of her, sort of. It was her body, unmistakably hers, in a tight black dress. Her face was blurred out. Artistic. Stylized. Like one of those cinematic filters you see in movie trailers. Below the picture, a tagline, luxury and discretion. Inquire respectfully. There were photos. Some taken in hotel rooms. Some by mirrors. Her legs, her hair, the outfits familiar, but distant. It felt like watching a stranger who wore my wife's skin. I scrolled further. Likes, 823. Verified clients, 31. Average rating, 4.8 stars. There was a menu. Literal services, with time slots and preferred locations listed. All in polite, coded language, but the meaning was clear as day. My mouth went dry. I set the phone down. Picked it back up. Scrolled again. My hands were trembling. I wasn't angry, not yet. It was something deeper. A kind of quiet collapse inside my chest. Like someone had slowly been pulling the floorboards out from under me, and I'd only just noticed I was falling. I put the phone away. Laid back on the bed. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to. Every part of me was screaming to do it. To throw her phone in front of her, point at the profile, and demand an explanation. But that would have given her time to twist the story. I knew Madison well enough to know she'd find a way to make it sound like I misunderstood something, or worse, like I was the bad guy for invading her privacy. So I kept quiet. I kept playing the role of the clueless husband. Coming home, talking about my day, smiling when she asked how work was. Inside, I was working like a machine. Every spare moment I had was spent planning what came next. I wanted proof. Real proof. Something no one could deny. Something I could hold in my hand and say, "This is who you really are." I started with a hotel. Not just any cheap roadside place, a high-end hotel downtown, the kind with modern lobby furniture and soft jazz playing in the elevator. I booked the room under a throwaway name and paid in cash. Asked for a corner suite on a high floor. Room 112. The kind of room that saw a lot of business, but no questions. Before checking in, I bought 2 small hidden cameras. One looked like a smoke detector, the other was a disguised air freshener with internal memory. No Wi-Fi, no signals. Just record to memory and save it all. I arrived early that morning, checked in, and got to work. I mounted one camera in the corner vent above the bed. It had a clear view of the room and would blend in with the decor. The second one I hid behind a decorative vase on the nightstand. It was angled toward the entrance and seating area. Together, they covered everything. That night, I sat in my truck and created a profile on the same dating app Madison used. I used the name Michael. I used a stock photo, some guy with a suit, grainy enough to hide details but sharp enough to pass. The program blurred his face. Within minutes, I found her. The same profile I'd seen on the cloned phone. Same blurred pictures, same luxury and discretion tagline. I sent her a message. Just a polite, short line. Available this week? She replied in 4 minutes. Her message was professional, almost cold. She sent a time list, a price list, and a few rules. She preferred hotels. Preferred the meeting to last no longer than an hour. No personal talk. No drama. Everything neat, transactional. I picked a time that matched the next afternoon. I asked if she could meet at room 112 at the hotel downtown. Her reply, "See you there." I stared at the message for a long time. I had just booked my own wife, and she didn't even know it. Now, here's where it gets strange. The next day was Jason's birthday. Jason is my assistant, good guy, early 30s, smooth talking, and always flirting with someone. He's single, always chasing the next party, and had mentioned just the week before that his last date was a total disaster. That morning at work, I handed him a small white envelope with a room key card inside. "What's this?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Birthday gift," I said. "Room 112 at the Belmore. Check in at 3 p.m. There's something special waiting for you." He gave me that look, half shocked, half excited. "Are you serious?" I nodded. "Just trust me." Jason was on cloud 9. He didn't ask many questions. I think he assumed I was setting him up with some kind of surprise date. Maybe even thought I was joking. But I watched him tuck that key into his pocket like it was made of gold. He left the office early. I stayed behind, acting like I had reports to finish. My stomach was twisted in knots, but I didn't let it show. At 2:55 p.m., I checked the cloned phone. Madison's location pinged downtown. At 3:07, she walked into the hotel. She was wearing a long black coat and carrying that small purse she always took on shoot days. I saw the timestamped location logs. At 3:09, her phone connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. Jason texted me at 4:12 p.m., just a thumbs-up emoji and the words, "Best birthday ever." I didn't reply. I waited until that evening to go retrieve the cameras. When I entered the room, the bed was slightly wrinkled, the pillows shifted. The air smelled faintly of her perfume. My stomach turned. I took the devices and left without looking back. Back in my truck, I held the 2 little gadgets in my hand and realized how far I'd come in just a week. From suspicion to investigation, from discovery to planning. Now, I had what I needed. The truth. And I was finally ready to watch it. I waited until the house was quiet. Madison had gone to bed around 10, like she always did. I stayed in the living room, sat on the old recliner with a glass of water and stared at the 2 little recording devices I'd retrieved from the hotel room. I got up. I plugged the first camera into my laptop and copied the files to a hidden folder. My hands felt heavy as I clicked on the first one. The video opened with a soft static crackle and then came into focus. The view was angled from the vent above the bed. Jason entered the hotel first. A few minutes later, she followed. Madison walked into the hotel room, exactly the way I imagined it. Calm, collected, like she'd done it 100 times. I recognized his laugh before I even saw his face. He was grinning, clearly excited, probably expecting something entirely different. At least, not at first. That was the part that twisted something in my chest, watching him talk to her like she was just some woman and seeing her act like she was. She took off her coat. Underneath, she was wearing something I'd never seen before. Something black, thin, almost theatrical. Nothing like what she ever wore at home. She looked different, sharper somehow. More confident. Her posture changed, like she stepped into another role the moment the door shut. They talked for a minute. He said something and she laughed, tilted her head, and called him baby. That word hit me harder than I expected. It was the way she said it. Soft. Familiar. Like she meant it. She'd never used that word with me. Not once. The video kept going. I didn't fast forward. I didn't pause. I just sat there, watching. I watched her brush her hair behind her ear the same way she did in the mirror each morning, except now it was part of a show. I saw her touch Jason's arm, lean in close, whisper something I couldn't hear, and then pull back with a look I had never seen on her face before. She looked alive, energized, like she was in complete control. And the worst part? She looked happy. Not just fake smile happy. She looked like someone who was exactly where she wanted to be. Her movements were smoother, more intentional. She never looked at the camera, of course she didn't, but there was something about the way she moved through the room that made me feel like I was the outsider. Like I didn't know her at all. She did things I'd never seen her do. Not once in our 3 years of marriage. Not even hinted at. And she did them without hesitation. Without awkwardness. She didn't ask, she didn't wait, she just performed. When it ended, she got dressed calmly, checked her phone, touched up her makeup in the mirror, and walked out without saying goodbye. Jason handed her a sealed envelope that I had given him earlier in the office. I told him then at the end of the evening, in the room, he would understand where to put it. Jason understood. Jason left a few minutes later, looking dazed and grinning. Like he'd just won the lottery. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't yell or punch anything. I just sat there. It was strange how quiet everything was inside me. I thought I'd feel rage or heartbreak. Instead, it was like someone had turned down the volume on my emotions. All I could hear was the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the house settling. I looked toward the hallway. Our bedroom door was still closed. Madison was in there, probably breathing softly, completely unaware of what I'd just seen. That night changed something permanent in me. It was like someone had taken a match and quietly burned away everything I thought I knew about her. About us. I didn't feel married anymore. I didn't feel like a husband. And after sitting in that silence for another hour, I finally stood up. I was done sitting still. It was time to get to work. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I didn't say a word to Madison. She was still curled up under the covers, calm and unaware. I got dressed in the dark, grabbed a cup of coffee from the kitchen, and drove straight to the law office where I'd scheduled an appointment a week earlier, just in case. I walked in with a folder full of everything I had, the investigators' reports, the photos from the hotels, and a USB stick with the videos. I handed it all to the lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Frank who'd been doing family law for over 20 years. He barely blinked as he skimmed the notes. By the time I left that building, the divorce paperwork was in motion. When I got home, Madison was gone out, working, no doubt. I didn't waste any time. I pulled the hidden closet open again and started taking pictures of everything. Every bracelet, necklace, designer bag, pair of heels, all of it. I laid them out, made them look presentable, and listed them through a private auction site I knew people used to flip high-end luxury goods. I set everything at 50% of retail value. It was still overpriced junk in my eyes, but people out there jump on that stuff like it's gold. Within hours, I had multiple buyers interested. I arranged pickups and drop-offs under a 2-week delay. That gave me time to piece it out quietly, bit by bit. I started small. First, a pair of red-bottom heels I knew she hadn't worn in months. Then the sunglasses from the bottom drawer. 1 or 2 purses she'd tucked away on the back shelf. When she was gone, I boxed them, drove them across town, and met up with the buyers. Some were resellers. Some were collectors. None of them asked questions. Madison didn't even notice. She rarely went into that closet. She had her usual wardrobe in our bedroom, her daily use stuff. That hidden stash was for special occasions, which worked in my favor. To be extra careful, I created a small barrier in front of the sliding cabinet, stacked boxes from her own photography gear. I told her I needed the space to sort through old files and camera equipment. She didn't question it, just said, "Don't forget to label everything." Over the next 10 days, I kept peeling pieces away. Her custom bracelets. A diamond-studded watch she never wore around me. It was like quietly unpacking the truth of who she really was. Every item felt like another little betrayal, neatly wrapped and tucked away behind drywall. On the 12th day, I cleared the last row of items. I sold 2 of her most expensive handbags to a woman from out of state who paid in cash and drove 6 hours to pick them up. She was thrilled. I was numb. Then I moved on to the gold. I took it to a jeweler I trusted, a quiet guy, older, who worked behind locked glass and didn't ask a lot of questions. He examined every chain, every ring, and confirmed they were real. "You sure about parting with this?" he asked. Absolutely, I said. He offered less than market value, but I didn't care. I took the cash, thanked him, and walked out. Back home, the hidden closet was now completely empty. I pulled out the shelf lighting and battery tap lights, wiped down the walls, and slid the cabinet back into place. Nothing but hollow drywall behind it now. That weekend, Madison went on a supposed out-of-town gig. Said it was a 2-day wedding shoot. I nodded, even helped her carry her bags to the car. The moment she left, I got to work. First, I changed all the locks on the house. Every door, every deadbolt. I installed a smart system that let me control entry remotely and deleted her code from the panel. Then I sat at my computer and began going through our shared accounts, not many, but enough. I blocked her from the streaming services. I removed her as an authorized user from my bank and canceled the secondary credit card she barely used but kept in her wallet. I called the internet provider and requested a new password. I logged into the utility accounts and changed everything to a personal email she didn't know about. She still had her own accounts, her business stuff, her phone, but the house was mine. The bills were in my name. The money was mine. And now it was all closed off from her. She had no idea any of this was happening. The court had scheduled a hearing for 2 months out. Standard timeline. I hadn't told her yet. There was no need to. Not until I was ready. I sat at the kitchen table that night, in the quiet, and looked around the house. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a waiting room. Everything was still, just holding its breath. The woman I married was gone. The woman in this house? She was just passing through. She came home late. Around 9:40 p.m., my phone rang. It was Madison. Her voice was tight, nervous. Hey. I can't get in. Did you change something with the lock? I looked at the clock, took a breath, and said calmly, I'll come check. When I pulled into the driveway, she was standing there in her trench coat, arms crossed, frustrated and cold. Her makeup was slightly smudged, and she had that same designer purse over her shoulder. I parked, walked past her without a word, and unlocked the door. Come in, I said. She followed me in, muttering something about how the keypad must be broken. I shut the door behind her. You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out of my house. She froze. What? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I walked over to the dining table, opened the folder that had been waiting there for, and slid the stack of divorce papers in front of her. Her name was printed clearly on the first page. She stared at it, blinking like it wasn't registering. What is this? She asked, her voice cracking. You know exactly what it is, I said. And we're not going to play games tonight. She grabbed the papers and flipped through them like she was looking for some kind of joke hiding between the lines. No. What are you talking about? This is insane. I don't understand. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled a second envelope from the drawer and laid it on the table. Inside were photographs, color prints from the investigators' reports, all time-stamped. Madison entering and leaving hotels. Her face was clear in every one. Always alone. She picked one up, looked at it, then another. This isn't what it looks like, she stammered. I was visiting a friend. One of them needed help moving. I had shoots. You know I do branding work, right? Some clients book hotels. Her eyes darted between the photos and me like she was waiting for a reaction. I gave her nothing. You were at a different hotel every other day, I said. Never with your gear. Never for more than 90 minutes. One shoot that week, Madison. One. Don't lie to me. She opened her mouth, shut it, then opened it again. Okay, well, sometimes I meet people there to talk about projects. Sometimes it's complicated. It's about to get simpler, I said, and this time, I brought out my laptop. I had it queued up. The profile page. The photos. The tagline. Her blurred face. Her real body. I clicked through the tabs. The likes. The reviews. The schedule. Then I opened the clip. I didn't play it. I just paused it on the frame of her walking into the hotel room. Wearing the same coat she had on now. She stared at it. Then sat down. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she whispered, You weren't supposed to find out. That was it. No apology. No denial. Just those words, as if this whole thing had been perfectly fine as long as I was in the dark. 3 years, I said quietly. 3 years of my life. While I worked. While I paid for everything. While I believed you were the woman I married. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said, her voice cracking. It just started, and I couldn't stop. I didn't know how. I shook my head. You knew how. You just didn't want to. She stood up suddenly and walked toward me like she was going to reach out. Please. Can we talk about this? Just us. Please, don't do this. I stepped back. You have an hour. That's not a request. Her eyes welled up. She knelt down right there in the living room, sobbing into her hands. Please don't throw me out. I made a mistake. I didn't love them. It wasn't about that. It was just attention. I needed to feel wanted again. I don't even know who I am anymore. I stared at her. Not in pity. Not in sympathy. Just observation. Like I was watching the last part of a movie I already knew the ending to. You're not the woman I married, I said. You haven't been for a long time. She looked up at me, broken, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I walked past her, grabbed my coat from the rack, and opened the door. You have an hour. Don't be here when I get back. Then I left. I didn't wait for her to speak again. I didn't want to hear another word. When I returned, she was standing at the door with her belongings and demanding that I give her her valuables and her designer items. I said that I had no idea what valuables she was talking about. Then I heard a wild scream for 30 seconds. In the end, I pushed her out the door and threatened to call the police if she didn't calm down. She left. The house was quiet after she left. That kind of quiet you don't notice right away. At first, it just feels like a break, a pause. But after a few days, you realize it's not a pause at all. It's an ending. What she left with that night fit into 2 suitcases. I assume she went to her parents' place. I never asked. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. The court hearing was scheduled about 7 weeks later. I sat in the courtroom across from her, watching her twist a handkerchief in her lap like she was folding laundry. She avoided eye contact with me almost the entire time. Her lawyer tried to claim that I had sold her personal property without consent, that I'd taken valuables that didn't belong to me. She cried in front of the judge, told stories about sentimental jewelry, claimed the bags and watches were gifts from family, claimed I'd cleaned out the house in some kind of jealous rage. My lawyer stayed calm. We had everything ready. Receipts, photos, listings with timestamps, footage of her profile, details of her business dealings, some legal, some not. The printouts from her own social accounts showing the bags, the gold, the clothes, used as props, marketed to strangers. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't say much. Just answered questions, showed the judge the proof, and sat back down. The judge leaned back in his chair for a long moment, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Then he looked at Madison and shook his head. You're lucky he isn't pressing further, he said. You're walking away with half the value of a car and no other claims. Given the evidence, I'm surprised you had the nerve to make this a fight. She didn't respond, just stared down at the table. That was the last time I saw her in person. She never said goodbye, never reached out again. After the divorce, she faded into the background. I'd hear bits and pieces, through mutual friends, occasional mentions in messages or local posts. She wasn't working much. Said she was freelancing, but no one ever saw her shooting anything. From what I gathered, she stayed with her parents and didn't do much of anything after the court date. I never blocked her number, but she never called. It felt strange, how something that had consumed my life, something that had torn me up and turned me inside out, could just go silent. No shouting, no revenge plans, no late-night texts begging for forgiveness. Just silence. For years passed. Life moved forward. Then, one afternoon in early spring, my phone rang. The number was local, but I didn't recognize it. I answered. Hello, I said. Is this Daniel? Yes. Who's this? This is Margaret, Madison's mother. Her voice was tired. I hadn't heard it since the wedding reception years ago. I remembered her smile back then, the way she hugged me and said, take care of her. She's special. Now she just sounded drained. I'm calling because I thought you should know. Madison passed away last week. There was a long pause. I didn't know what to say. The words didn't feel real. She'd been sick for some time, Margaret continued. She didn't tell many people. We didn't even know until it was too late. What happened? I asked, my voice low. They said it was complications from an infection. Something she couldn't fight off. I don't know all the details. But I did. I didn't say it, of course. Didn't mention the double life she'd been living. Didn't bring up the profile, the reviews, the way she'd thrown everything away for attention and validation. I didn't say a word. I just offered my condolences. Calm. Respectful. Short. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. Thank you, she replied. I just thought you should know. Then we said goodbye. After I hung up, I sat by the window for a long time. The sun was just starting to go down. Everything outside looked quiet and golden. Birds moving across power lines. A neighbor mowing his yard. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just a strange stillness, like a chapter had finally closed. Like a door that had been hanging open for too long had finally swung shut. I never went to the funeral. I didn't need to. She had already left my life long before that call came. The woman who died wasn't the woman I married. That person had vanished long ago, behind lies, behind secrets, behind a mask I never saw coming. All that was left now was silence. And I was just fine with that. Share your thoughts in the comments. Can someone truly hide a second life for years? Or are the signs always there? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.